I would like to, first of all, thank the organizers, and in particular Peter Pettingers, to bring us together. A few months ago in Washington, I said to Peter that information and good intelligence is true power, and given the enlightening speeches we have heard for the past 2 days, I definitely think that we're going to leave London stronger together. I mean by us, the members of the free world. The title of this session, and as all the others before, I think requires not just a few minutes discussion, but maybe a few days, for I believe that it should be at the core of our geopolitics and geostrategic strategy for the decades to come. Most of us have watched in the early 80s Mad Max, at a time when it seemed quite unlikely that there will be one day a shortage of fuel energy, or maybe the lack of it, and that humans will have to fight over it, or that we would be on the brink of civilization collapse into another order where the law of the strongest prevails and the rule of law disappears. Sorry, I've difficulties listening to myself with the conversations. I think we now know that these resources are not infinite, and we can develop renewable energy on our own territories, and that we need to do so urgently to counter climate change, of course, but this is not where our common problem lies. I think it lies in the fact that for short-term profit, in the name of a global world where no matter what the natural resources were, they would be available, because certainly of the lack of political courage in a lot of countries to explain that by producing locally it may be more expensive to their peoples, but the benefits are greater with the many advantages of local distribution channels and networks, the fact that it creates jobs locally, retains the skills and competencies needed, and allows the patents that are registered not to be transferred along with the technological skills somewhere else, namely the eastern part of our planet, where the working conditions continue to be bad for workers, close to slavery in some cases, where none of the security norms for the environment are respected, which leads to cheaper goods and higher profit, but kills local and national productions that cannot compete. I just want to give one example. A few years ago, I was in Senegal, where the national company making motorbikes had gone bankrupt. Why did it do so? Simply because China had copied the local motorbike, had then inundated the market half the price of the national built motorbikes, and very quickly the national company went bankrupt. So what has it got to do with security? Well, it has to do that, of course, all the people making the motorbikes in Senegal were laid off. It led to unemployment. Unemployment leads to poverty, and poverty leads to the youth being easy targets to be recruited to join local groups, terrorist groups in some cases. But where are we now? I think with the COVID pandemic, it has highlighted our dependency, namely vis-à-vis China, down to the production of masks. The war in Ukraine has highlighted the dependency on other countries, namely Russia, for fossil energy and gas. Are we drawing any lessons from that? Well, Jean Monnet, one of the founding fathers of the European Union, once said, "Men accept change only when it is necessary, and they see necessity only in a crisis." We argue that we are in the middle of a major crisis, and I think the previous panel made a brilliant demonstration of it. We need to invest, of course, in green energies to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050, but not just to avoid climate change that affect our countries with massive fires, droughts, storms that lead to massive displacements of populations, mass immigration, and cost billions to rebuild when it is possible. So what do we need to do? We need to invest to protect our national sovereignty and reduce our dependency on other countries, that may be non-belligerent today, but maybe in the future, as we see the number of democracies reduce in numbers dramatically with time. George Orwell, Orwell's 1984, I think everybody has kind of read it again, has known a renewed interest in the prophecy it holds, and we need to come together, I think, to ensure that the society he describes never comes true. Without security, there is no access to natural resources, and natural resources are needed to afford good security and defense of a country. We'll make now my second and last point. For a few years, I have written notes to the French president and members of parliament, enticing them to denounce one country, namely China, and now Russia, for their hegemonic and imperialistic ambitions and the preying on the natural resources in Africa, in particular rare earth metals that we all need to keep our lead in technological developments, but also, and it is more serious, in increasing the debt of these countries by building major infrastructures that in a lot of cases they do not need, but in a lot of cases they cannot afford, forcing these countries to give up the exploitation of mines to pay back the investments and allow the plundering of their forest and maritime resources to pay their debts back. So while the French were in Africa, in some countries, ensuring the peace with the presence of its military and training the local forces, security forces, others were exploiting the resources in a non-aggressive manner, but quite efficiently. Of course, the arrival of Wagner in Africa has changed the non-aggressive style of China to that of direct takeover and the rapid eviction of European presence. I want to say here how much I agree with the analysis of Dr. Danza Kurama on the security matters on the continent, and yes, it is indeed time for Africa to sit in the international institutions. I think Africa is central to our future, as it was to our origins. I think one only needs to go to the National Museum in Addis Ababa and meet with our common ancestor, Lucy, to ensure that all does not end where it all started. So my conclusion is that energy security and national security are intimately linked, and if one weakens, it affects the resilience against the external political pressures. Our attention ought to remain focused on Africa and the military coup, or coups, to put an S to it, that are putting into question the democratic processes that have successfully been put in place over time. And I would like to again reiterate our full support to Ukraine and say that we will all come together, of course, to rebuild a strong country when the war is over, as of course it will end. And in terms of resilience, the Ukrainian people, I think, have given us the best example of human courage and determination. Thank you very much.